Welcome. Come in, close the door, get comfortable, and listen closely. The body is a miracle you have yet to learn how to listen to. In its silence, it holds answers. In its movement, it carries life. And in its memory, it hides the key to healing. It is not against you. It never was. It simply waits for you to remember the pact you made with it before you were born. Your body is not just the house you live in. It is the bridge between your existence and life itself. It breathes for you while you sleep. It repairs its own wounds in silence. It beats without being asked. It has never stopped being by your side. And yet, how much do you truly do for it? We were taught to care for many things in life: our work, our money, our relationships. We were told that success lies in what we build outside, but no one ever taught us to care for the only home we can never move out of. We got used to ignoring it, to believing that fatigue is normal, that pain is just part of life, that illness is an inevitable fate. They sold us the idea that aging equals deterioration, that vitality is the privilege of the young. But it's not age that drains our energy. It's the daily choices we make without even noticing. This audiobook is not a manual of diets or passing trends. It's not here to load you with rules or repetition counts. It's here to remind you of something you've always known, but perhaps forgot in the noise of the world. Your body is the most wondrous miracle in all of creation. You only need to remember it. You only need to listen. And if you learn to listen, you'll discover that health is not a goal to reach, but the natural state of one who learns to live in harmony with themselves. This audiobook is not here to impose anything. It is here to open a door. Welcome to Protect Your Shell. Part 1. The House. You'll never be able to leave. No one remembers the exact moment they entered their body. Yes, we can remember our childhood. Games, familiar faces, the first bike, the fear of the dark. But we don't remember the instant we woke up here, inside this shell given to us without instructions or a guarantee. We inhabit it without question, as if it were eternal, without realizing that from the very first day it began to wear down. This body, which feels so much like ours, is more of a loan, a vehicle with an expiration date that, whether we like it or not, will someday leave us stranded in the middle of the road. Yet we spend our lives neglecting it, subjecting it to unnecessary stress, feeding it in haste, burdening it with repressed emotions, and forgetting that it is, in truth, the only home we will never be able to abandon. We live as if we were unbreakable. We spend decades ignoring the signs: chronic fatigue, the lump in the throat that appears during difficult conversations, the backaches with no clear cause, the dizziness that follows a day of anxiety. But one day, the body collects the debt. For some, it's a soft warning, a small crack in the wall, a recurring headache, a pressure in the chest, digestion that no longer feels the same. For others, it's a collapse, a total breakdown that leaves them face to face with the reality they never wanted to see. The body is not a slave, it's a messenger. And if you ignore it long enough, it will scream until you have no choice but to listen. Everything in this world can change: the people around you, the city you live in, the ideas you stand for. But one thing will stay with you until your very last breath: your body. And the question is, what kind of relationship do you have with it? Do you treat it like a temple or like a trash bin? Do you listen to it or silence it with pills, caffeine, and distractions? Do you pause to thank it each day for carrying you, or do you only pay attention when something starts to go wrong? The problem is no one taught us how to live inside the body. Since childhood, we were told about the mind, the soul, the importance of knowledge and success, but very few taught us that the body is the foundation of everything, that a clear thought can only arise in a well-nourished brain, that inner peace is impossible when your nervous system is inflamed from years of stress, that self-love begins with the way you treat your skin, your organs, your rest, They made us believe that health is just the absence of illness. But the truth is, health is the freedom to fully exist. It's waking up energized, walking light, breathing without heaviness in your chest. It's feeling that your body is an ally, not an enemy punishing you with aches and fatigue. Many spend their lives chasing happiness without realizing you can't be happy if your body is at war with you. Chronic pain, inflammation, accumulated muscle tension, none of these are coincidences. They are the reflection of years of unconscious habits, unprocessed emotions, and neglect disguised as priorities. We think we can postpone our health, that we can save it for later. But the truth is that health is the foundation upon which everything else is built. Without health, money is meaningless. Without health, love becomes exhausting. Without health, personal growth becomes an uphill battle. This book is not just a manual for staying healthy. It is a wake-up call, a call to understand that your body is not a machine you can push until it breaks. It is a living organism with its own intelligence, with needs that go far beyond food and exercise. It is a mirror of your story, of your thoughts, of the emotions you've buried beneath your skin. And if you're reading this today, it's because on some level, you know it's time to change. Don't wait for your body to give you an ultimatum. Don't wait for illness to make you value what you take for granted today. Don't wait until it's too late to learn how to inhabit this shell with love and respect. Because taking care of your body is not an act of vanity, it is an act of survival. There comes a moment in life when you realize you're not the same anymore. You don't know exactly when it happened, but one day you look in the mirror and notice something different. The dark circles are deeper. Your skin has lost its glow. The energy you used to have for running around is gone. You used to stay up all night and feel fine the next day. Now, one sleepless night takes days to recover from. At first you ignore it. You think it's normal, that it's just part of growing up. But over the years, the symptoms pile up. Digestion slows down. Insomnia becomes a regular guest. Mysterious aches appear more often. And a silent fatigue settles in like a permanent visitor. Something inside you knows this isn't right, but you keep going. Because that's how we were taught, to ignore, to endure, to postpone caring for the body until we have no choice. Many people spend their lives masking the symptoms without ever asking about the root cause. They take a pill for the migraine without wondering why it returns every week. They swallow an antacid without questioning why their stomach feels like it's on fire. They grow accustomed to living in pain, assuming discomfort is simply the price of existence. But it is not normal to feel this way. We grow accustomed to what we shouldn't, to living with chronic stress, breathing shallowly, eating what slowly kills us, sleeping less than we need. We become used to being disconnected from our own bodies, until one day that very body puts a stop to everything. And then we understand that health is not optional. The body is not an enemy. It's a messenger, and every symptom is a sign. If you're constantly exhausted, your body is telling you it needs rest. If your skin irritates easily, something within you is inflamed. If you feel constant anxiety, there's an overloaded nervous system begging for calm. If you're getting sick often, your immune system is asking for backup. The problem is we've learned to see health as something external, a checklist of rules imposed by others. They tell us what to eat, how much to sleep, what exercises to do, but no one taught us to listen, to truly pay attention to what our body actually needs. Because what works for one doesn't always work for another. There is no perfect diet, no universal exercise method, no one-size-fits-all way to heal. Every body is unique. Learning to live in it is an art. The body already knows what it needs. It holds an ancient intelligence, older than any science, more precise than any diagnosis. But to hear that intelligence, you must first clear out the external noise, the trendy diets, the so-called gurus claiming to have the absolute truth, the belief that health is only about aesthetics. Health is not just how you look in the mirror, it's how you feel inside your own skin. When you stop treating your body like a machine and begin treating it like a living organism, everything changes. You start to notice which foods inflame you and which ones energize you. You begin to understand that stress isn't just a nuisance, it's a silent poison. You realize that rest is not a luxury, but a biological necessity. And suddenly, everything that seemed complicated becomes simple. Caring for your body is not a sacrifice. It's an act of self-love. And self-love is not just pretty words, it's action. It's what you choose to do each day with the only thing you truly own, your health. In a quiet corner of the world where few are watching, something worth remembering took place. The doctor sighed. He took off his glasses and laid them on the desk. He looked intently at the woman in front of him, and, after a pause, spoke in a voice trying to be gentle. "Marta, if you keep going like this, in a few months your body is going to collapse." She forced a smile as if trying to laugh it off. "Collapse? Doctor, don't scare me," she joked, downplaying the warning. He didn't smile. "I'm not exaggerating. Look at your labs. Your liver is inflamed, your cortisol is through the roof, your glucose levels are out of control, your body is screaming, and if you don't listen now, it's going to make itself heard in a much louder way." Marta swallowed hard. She wanted to joke again, but suddenly her voice began to tremble. "It's the stress, isn't it?" The doctor nodded. "Yes, and not just that. Your body is paying the bill for everything your mind has accumulated over the years. How often do you eat in a rush? How often do you sleep less than 5 hours? How often is your breathing so shallow you don't even realize you're holding your breath?" Marta looked away. It's just that life doesn't give me a break. The job, the kids, the bills. Life never gives you a break, Marta. The break has to come from you." Silence. The doctor continued. "Sometimes we think our body is betraying us, that it gets sick for no reason, that it slows us down when we most need to be strong. But it's not betrayal. It's a message." Marta rubbed her hands, uneasy. "So what am I supposed to do?" The doctor leaned back in his chair and laced his fingers. "First, stop seeing health as something you can fix with a pill and start seeing it as a relationship. Your body is like a partner you've neglected for years. It's been loyal, it's endured, it's put up with your excesses, your stress, your lack of rest. But there comes a point when it can't hold you up anymore. If you don't start taking care of it, it's going to stop holding you at all." Marta felt a lump rise in her throat. That night, when she got home, she looked at herself in the mirror with unusual attention. It wasn't just her skin that looked tired. It was as if all her energy had been dimmed. She recalled all the times she had ignored the headaches, the fatigue, the insomnia, all the times she had forced herself to keep going, treating her body like a machine she could push endlessly. She sat on the edge of the bed, took a deep breath, and closed her eyes. She had never thought of her body as a travel companion. She had never asked for forgiveness for treating it like an enemy. In the darkness of her room, she understood something she had never realized before. Health is not the absence of disease. It is the relationship you have with yourself. We were taught to care for everything and everyone except ourselves. We were taught to be productive, efficient, strong. But no one taught us how to rest. No one taught us to pause before the body is forced to do it for us. The body is a refuge. It is the most real home we have. And if we neglect it, there's no other place to move into. That's why, if something is worth investing in, it's not a car, it's not a house, it's not fashionable clothes. It's this, the vessel with which we breathe, love, laugh, cry. This is not a minor subject. It is the subject, because without health, nothing else truly matters. The body is a silent witness to every choice, every repressed emotion, every thought that never made it to the surface. It doesn't judge, it doesn't complain, but it doesn't forget either. Each cell is a memory, each muscle an archive of experiences, each organ a letter that time writes within us. And yet, many go through life ignoring it, treating the body as something separate from their existence, as if it were merely a vehicle and not part of the very essence of who we are. In a corner of the world where few ever look, something worth remembering happened. There was a woman named Sophia, a middle-aged writer more interested in the world she created in her mind than in the one her body inhabited. She would spend countless hours immersed in her novels, breathing life into her stories through the screen, but her own reflection in the mirror was a stranger. She paid no attention to the fatigue piling up in her bones, the breathlessness from climbing stairs, the small ailments her body whispered as warnings. One day, while writing in her study, she felt a sharp pain in her chest, a discomfort that forced her to stop, to lift her hands off the keyboard and, for the first time in a long time, listen to what her body had to say. It wasn't just stress or accumulated exhaustion. It was a call for help, a plea for care. But like so many times before, Sophia ignored it. She convinced herself it would pass, that the pain was just a temporary nuisance. But life has its own language for those who refuse to listen. Days later, a sudden fainting spell on the street forced her to wake up to an undeniable reality. Her body wasn't an accessory. It wasn't a disposable tool she could push without giving anything in return. Her body was her home, her temple, the only place where she truly existed. In the hospital, connected to machines tracking her heartbeat, she understood something that had always seemed abstract. Self-love doesn't begin in the mind. It begins in the body. It's not just about accepting yourself, motivating yourself, or embracing your emotional history. Above all, it means caring for yourself as you would care for someone you deeply love, nourishing yourself with respect, moving with gratitude, resting with devotion. The signs had always been there, but it took her years to recognize them. Like so many people who live disconnected from themselves, postponing well-being until urgency leaves them no choice. But the question is, why wait for the body to scream when we could learn to hear it whisper? Sophia made a decision that would change her life. It wasn't a grand resolution or a hollow New Year's vow. It was a pact with her own existence, a genuine commitment to treat her body with the same tenderness she gave her words. She began with small changes, breathing deeply each morning before writing, walking without rushing, savoring each bite instead of eating hurriedly in front of a screen. And little by little, her body responded. The pain eased, the fatigue faded, and in the mirror, she began to see someone who didn't just exist in the world, but who was truly living it. Sophia's story is not unique. It is the story of millions who have forgotten that the body is not an enemy, it's an ally. It's not here to be punished with extreme diets, endless days without rest, or years of unexpressed stress. It's here to support us, to be the bridge between the world and experience, to let us feel, love, and create. Every choice we make is a seed planted in either our well-being or our decline. The question is, what are we planting today? Because sooner or later, the body will make us harvest what we have sown in it. The body is wise, but its wisdom isn't measured in words. It doesn't shout, argue, or impose. It simply waits, patiently, for us to listen. And when the disconnection is too great, when the mind has ignored its signals for too long, the body takes drastic measures. Illness, chronic fatigue, pain without medical explanation. These are letters written in the ink of neglect, desperate attempts to call us back home. This is not just about luck or genetics. Longevity and health are not matters of chance. They are the outcome of a continuous dialogue between what we think, what we feel, and what we do with our bodies. Every thought is an electric signal. Every emotion is a chemical reaction. Every habit is a pattern recorded deep within our cells. If we accumulate tension, stress, repressed anger, the body has no choice but to somatize it. But if we learn to observe ourselves, to pause, to breathe consciously, then we can become our own healers. In a corner of the world where few ever look, something worth remembering took place. An old fisherman named Esteban had a sacred ritual. Every morning upon waking, he would place his feet on the damp sand and greet the sea. It wasn't a casual gesture, but an act of reverence. While others awoke hurriedly, already consumed by worries, Esteban gave himself a few minutes to feel the wind, to listen to the ebb and flow of the waves, to synchronize his breath with the rhythm of the ocean. To Esteban, health was not merely the absence of illness, but a dance with nature. Over the years, he had seen too many friends wither before their time, not from inevitable causes, but because they lived disconnected from their own rhythm. Water that doesn't flow becomes stagnant, he would say. A body that doesn't move rusts. A mind that doesn't rest shatters. And so, without medical books or scientific theories, he lived with the simplicity of someone who had understood that the secret to well-being lies in harmony with existence. But one day, Esteban fell ill. The man who had never known the weight of fatigue or the ache of joints began to feel his body stiffen, his breath become short. His children insisted on taking him to the doctor, but he refused. Not out of stubbornness, but because he knew the illness wasn't in his body. It came from something deeper. For weeks, he had felt a subtle unease settling into his chest, a quiet discouragement he couldn't explain. And now, his body was echoing it. So he did the only thing he knew to do. He returned to the sea. He sat by the shore and spoke in a low voice, not with words, but with his presence. He let the breeze clear his mind, the salt cleanse his skin, the murmur of the waves remind him of who he was. He didn't seek an immediate cure, nor did he expect miracles. He simply allowed himself to be. And slowly, with each wave that came and went, he felt his body respond. The stiffness began to ease, the tightness in his chest faded. His healing didn't come from a pill, but from his capacity to return to himself. Not everyone has an ocean outside their door, but everyone has a body that speaks to them, a sacred inner space where they can come home. This isn't magic or superstition, it's pure biology. When the body relaxes, cells regenerate, the immune system strengthens, the heart finds a steadier rhythm. It's not a secret. It's the truth we've forgotten in our frantic race toward exhaustion. Esteban didn't stop aging, because aging is inevitable. But he never fell ill in the same way again, because he learned that health isn't just a physical matter. It's a balance between the mind, the body, and the connection to something greater. His story is a reminder that we don't need to wait until we're at the edge to start listening. We don't need to reach disease to value well-being. Your body is already speaking to you. Are you willing to listen? We were taught to trust medicine, machines, scientific breakthroughs, but we were never taught to trust the body. They told us what to eat, what to drink, how to sleep, but they never taught us how to listen to what every organ, every muscle, every heartbeat is trying to tell us. We grew up believing health was just the absence of disease, when in truth, it is the presence of an ongoing dialogue between who we are and how we inhabit ourselves. From a young age, we were taught to listen with our minds, to obey the calendar, the obligations, the expectations. But no one ever told us that, in silence, beneath it all, the body speaks its own language. No one translated the whispers of the stomach, the cries of the neck, the tremors of our dreams. And so we grew up ignoring the one who has accompanied us the most throughout life. Not the soul, not love, the body. That perfect organism that has been working for decades without ever being thanked. That continues to breathe even when we neglect it. That gives us energy even when we don't sleep. And that only asks, every now and then, to be remembered, to be spoken to be granted peace. There are people who can't recall the last time they walked barefoot on the earth, who don't know how their breath sounds when it's not rushed, People who can't sleep without taking something, who eat without hunger, who sleep without resting, and who smile without joy. They don't do it out of malice. They do it because no one ever told them that living wasn't about running, that the body is not a machine, that we didn't come into this life just to survive the weeks and pay the bills. The body doesn't lie. It is the first sage, the first alert, the first home. And yet, we treat it as if it were disposable, as if its only purpose were to carry the burden of our thoughts, as if emotions didn't leave their mark on the back, on the skin, in our posture, in digestion, as if anxiety didn't have the shape of a knot in our muscles. Look closely. The people who take care of themselves aren't the ones with more money or more time. They're the ones who've understood that self-care is not a luxury. It is a political act, a rebellion against a system that wants functional bodies, not joyful ones. You know who understood this early? Dancers. Isadora Duncan, that woman who danced barefoot while others were still bound in corsets, used to say her dance didn't start from the legs, but from the solar plexus. That every movement was a conversation with the universe. That the body, in freedom, becomes language. And she was right. The body in freedom doesn't need music, it invents it. Like Michael Jordan did with the air, turning every jump into a prayer suspended between gravity and glory. Like Serena Williams with her fury, not blind rage, but a dance of strength and precision that transformed each stroke into an act of rebirth. Like Bruce Lee with silence, not to hide, but to sharpen his presence. Every gesture of his was philosophy in motion, poetry written with muscle and gaze. Like Julio Iglesias, who one day, after a devastating accident, lost everything. The movement of the body he had trained with the dream of becoming a football star, the glorious vision of shining at Real Madrid. But instead of cursing fate, he turned stillness into melody, pain into voice, limitation into stage. And from that chair where life sat him down to reflect, he stood up singing. And he sang so deeply, so truthfully, so fully, so humanly, that he became the most universal voice in the language you and I speak. And like all of them, the known and the anonymous, who one day understood what so few dare to accept, the body is not a possession. It is not a thing we own. It is a temple we inhabit, a creature to be honored, a flame to be accompanied, to be heard, to be cared for. And if you treat it with respect, it responds with miracles no doctor, no coach, no God can promise, but that only love can provoke. If you eat what poisons you, sleep beside what robs your peace, and think thoughts that wilt you, how do you expect to bloom? This isn't about diets or perfect routines. This is about love. Waking up 5 minutes early to stretch, breathing consciously, even if only a couple of times a day, choosing a piece of fruit instead of an excuse, walking in the sunlight, saying no to the stimulus that leaves you empty, turning down the noise, turning up your own voice. You don't need to be an expert. You just need to want to live better. And for that, there are rituals. Small daily acts that require no money, just presence. Before eating, smell your food. Give thanks, even silently, simply for being alive. That prepares your body more than any supplement. Upon waking, move your joints slowly, like an animal emerging from its den. Your body is not obligated to activate like a machine. Once a day, breathe deeply, 3 times, in through your nose, out through your mouth. Not because it's a technique, but because it's your oxygen, your right, your present. Listen to music without multitasking. A song that makes you dance even if you don't know how, even if you're alone, even if you cry while dancing. That too is medicine. Touch your skin with reverence. When you shower, when you apply lotion, when you wash your face, your body is not a garment. It is a map. It is the only temple you will ever inhabit in this life. And if you still doubt how much power your body holds, think of this. Every emotion you've ever had passed through it. Every orgasm, every grief, every embrace, every fear, every moment of faith. You lived all of it there. In that house you sometimes neglect. In that miracle you keep occupying as if it were indestructible. But it's not indestructible. It gets tired. It gets poisoned. It shuts down if you don't turn it on. And it turns on through joy, through the joy of eating something nourishing, of dancing in the rain, of sleeping without an alarm, of loving without judgment, of walking barefoot, of laughing until your stomach hurts. Do you know why so many people get sick without apparent cause? Because they haven't listened to themselves in years. Because they live to be useful, not alive. Because they no longer remember what it feels like to breathe without guilt. You don't need to have the perfect figure or the training of an athlete. What you need is the awareness that you deserve to feel well, that you can learn to care for yourself with gentleness, that self-care is not selfish, it's balance. You deserve to feel good, and if you don't believe it, that's part of the wound too. But here you are, breathing, reading, with this body that, despite everything, is still betting on you. All you need is to look at it as if discovering something sacred, because it is. Your body is a tree growing from within, and you, though you may have forgotten, are still root, sap, blossom, and fruit. You only need to remember how to water yourself. The body doesn't wait for us to understand it, but it does wait for us to stop ignoring it. It's not a servant we can exploit to the point of collapse without consequence. It's a travel companion, and like any companion, if we don't treat it with respect, it will eventually force us to stop. It will speak through unexplained fatigue, stubborn insomnia, persistent inflammation, that dull ache that shows up when you least expect it. Not to punish you, but because its only mission is to keep you alive. And when imbalance becomes unbearable, it has no choice but to sound the alarm. In a corner of the world, where few ever look, something happened worth remembering. A woman named Clara had spent over 2 decades taking care of everyone but herself. A mother, a wife, a worker, always in service of others. Her body became an instrument for fulfilling obligations, for carrying loads no one else wanted to bear. She never allowed herself to pause. "I don't have time to get sick," she'd say. Until one day her body decided it could no longer be ignored. What started as a simple headache turned into uncontrollable vertigo. Her vision blurred, her legs trembled, her heart raced for no reason. Suddenly, everything she had postponed came crashing down. The doctors told her nothing was seriously wrong, that all her tests were perfect, that it was probably stress. But if everything was fine, why did it feel like her body was shutting down? She had to reach her limit to realize the illness wasn't the problem. It was the result. It wasn't her body that had failed. It was her way of living. She believed she could neglect herself without paying a price. She had ignored every warning, every unexplained fatigue, every sleepless night. Only when she was forced to stop did she understand what she had never wanted to face. She couldn't go on without changing. That was her turning point. Not with a pill, not with surgery, but with something far more powerful, the decision to listen. For the first time in her life, she began to care for her body as she cared for others. She learned to breathe without rushing, to move with intention, to nourish her system with gratitude instead of guilt. She didn't heal overnight, because the body doesn't forget years of neglect in a single day. But with every act of self-love, her energy returned, her mind cleared, and her skin stopped reflecting the exhaustion of a life postponed. She realized it wasn't a miracle. It was simply the body responding to a new agreement, the agreement of respect. Clara didn't need more proof to understand what so many still refuse to see. Health isn't just genetics. It's not just food or exercise. It's the reflection of the relationship we have with ourselves. If we don't treat ourselves with kindness, the body dims. If we fill it with tension and resentment, it inflames. If we live in a rush and constant struggle, it wears out before its time. The question isn't what illness we want to avoid, but what kind of life we want to build. Now it's your turn. It's not too late to change how you inhabit your body. You don't need to wait for something to go wrong before you begin to care for yourself. You don't have to reach the point of exhaustion to value your energy. All it takes is a moment of stillness, to close your eyes and ask yourself with honesty, how do I really feel? What you find there will be the compass that leads you back to yourself. In the next part, we'll go deeper into that journey. We'll talk about trapped emotions, the invisible burdens we carry without knowing it, the way our personal stories are written into our skin, our bones, and our blood. Because healing the body is not just about physical habits. It's about releasing everything that, without realizing it, has been making us sick. So, are you ready to let go of what no longer belongs to you? Part 2. The weight of the past in the bones of the present. The body remembers what the mind forgets. Every cell, every muscle, every joint holds within it a silent story. No matter how much time has passed, the traces of pain, stress, and fear remain there, etched like an invisible tattoo that doesn't fade with the years. We are not just the sum of what we eat, how we sleep, and how we move. We are the result of every repressed emotion, every sleepless night, every sigh that was trapped in our chest. We believe the past is behind us, that what we've lived through no longer affects us, but the body sees things differently. What the mind denies, the body expresses. What the soul silences, the body shouts. In a corner of the world where few ever look, something happened worth remembering. A woman named Elena had been battling back pain for years. Every morning, as she rose, she felt a dull ache between her shoulder blades, a weight that made her hunch over the moment she set her feet on the floor. She had seen doctors, tried massages, changed her mattress, followed posture-strengthening exercises. Nothing worked. The doctors told her there was nothing physically wrong with her back, but she felt it every day as if she were carrying a backpack full of invisible stones. One day, a friend convinced her to try something different. Go to an emotional release therapy, she said. Elena, skeptical, agreed with little hope. She found herself in a small room with a therapist who greeted her with a gentle smile and asked her just one question. If the pain in your back could speak, what would it say? Elena laughed awkwardly. She had never thought about it that way. But when she closed her eyes and let her body respond, she knew the answer immediately. I'm tired of holding it all together. Holding. That was the word. Holding her family, her job, everyone's expectations, never allowing anyone to hold her. She remembered her mother telling her since childhood that she had to be strong, that she couldn't fall apart, that crying was for the weak, and her body had learned the lesson well. Her muscles became a shield, a tense armor that kept her upright on the outside but destroyed her from within. That day, she understood something no one had ever told her. The pain in her back wasn't physical, it was emotional. Her body had taken on all that burden and turned it into chronic tension. It wasn't a coincidence, it was a message. And it's not just Elena. It's everyone who carries the weight of the past in their body without realizing it. The constant headaches of those who never allow themselves to rest. The aching knees of those who are afraid to move forward. The sore throat of someone who never says what they truly think. The tightness in the chest of someone who's spent years swallowing their tears. This is not magic, nor mysticism. It's biology. Prolonged stress causes inflammation. Anguish disrupts body chemistry. Anxiety wears out the adrenal glands. These aren't fleeting emotions. They are physical, measurable, real changes. The problem is that most people don't notice until it's too late, until the body breaks down. We were taught to treat the body as if it were a machine disconnected from the mind and soul. We learned about nutrition, exercise, medicine. But no one told us that emotions are also digested, that thoughts leave behind toxins, that the body has a language of its own, and if we don't learn to listen, it will speak to us through illness. Right now, in this moment, as you read this, your body is telling you its story. Maybe you feel it in the weight you carry on your shoulders every time you push yourself too hard, or in the tightness of your jaw when you swallow your words, or in the fatigue that overtakes you after years of fighting life instead of flowing with it. The body never lies, but the real question is, are you going to keep ignoring it? This isn't about healing with pills, miracle therapies, or empty promises of instant wellness. It's about something deeper, learning to decode what the body is telling us, becoming the translators of our own bodily story. Because there is no real healing without reconciliation, no health without listening, no wellness without love. And that is what we're going to learn in this section. How to read the body's signals before they turn into screams for help. How to release the trapped tensions that have been weighing you down without you even knowing. How to transform the body into a place of life, not struggle. Because every heartbeat, every breath, every muscle that moves is proof that there's still time. Time to heal, time to let go, time to begin again. Here begins the real journey. Here begins the transformation. Elena began to see her body differently after that session. Every time her back ached, instead of taking a painkiller and pretending everything was fine, she paused. She asked herself, "What am I holding on to today?" Sometimes it was pressure from work, other times the weight of other people's expectations, but now she no longer ignored it. The body has memory. It doesn't forget sleepless nights, or the worries that loop endlessly, or the words left unspoken. Everything we feel and do not express finds a place to settle, sometimes in tight muscles, other times in an upset stomach, or in a pain that seems to have no apparent cause. And the worst part is, we get used to it. We get used to waking up tired, to living with tension in our neck, to breathing shallowly without realizing we haven't filled our lungs in years. We get used to headaches, inflammation, fatigue, as if they were an inevitable part of life. But they're not. They're signs, warnings that something inside us is not right. The problem is that most people don't listen, and when they finally do, it's often too late. In a corner of the world where few ever look, something happened worth remembering. Hugo was a businessman, a successful entrepreneur with a packed agenda, a phone that never stopped ringing, and a to-do list that seemed endless. He built his life on effort and discipline. To him, resting was a waste of time. His motto was, "Don't stop until you make it." For years, he ignored the warning signs from his body. When his head hurt, he drank coffee. When he felt exhausted, he pushed through. When his back tightened, he shrugged and said it would pass. But the body doesn't wait forever. One afternoon, in the middle of a meeting, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. At first, he dismissed it, but the pain intensified. His breathing became erratic. The world spun around him. Minutes later, he was on the floor, his team calling for emergency help. When he woke up in the hospital, the doctor was blunt. It wasn't a heart attack, but it was a warning. Your heart is exhausted. Your body is asking for help. Hugo didn't know what to say. He had spent his entire life demanding his body to endure. Never once did he stop to consider that maybe he was the one who needed to take care of it. For the first time in his life, he felt afraid. Afraid of losing everything he had worked so hard to build. But more than that, afraid of realizing that he had never stopped to ask if what he was building even made sense. Rest is not a luxury. It is a biological necessity. Prolonged stress is not a badge of honor. It's poison to the body. Chronic fatigue is not normal. It's the price we pay for living in conflict with ourselves. And yet, the world has taught us to see it all backwards. They tell us we'll sleep when we're dead, that we must fight to the end, that success demands sacrifice. And in the process, we forget that success without health is a curse, that there is no point in reaching the summit if the body you arrive with is broken. The body is a fragile balance, and every choice matters. Every meal is a message. Every breath is a decision. Every thought, every emotion, every ounce of stress we accumulate is another piece in the puzzle of our health. The problem is, no one taught us to see it that way. We were taught to trust doctors, pills, and quick fixes, but no one taught us to trust the body, to read its signals, to decipher its codes. What we now call illness is often nothing more than the consequence of years of disconnection. Hugo understood that afternoon in the hospital. When he was discharged, he stepped out into the world with a new perspective. He decided that his body was not his enemy, that he could no longer treat his health as if it were an endless resource. And so, he began with small changes. He took a breath without rushing. He learned to say no, to take a break, to listen. And little by little, his body responded. Because the body doesn't need perfection. It just needs to be treated with the respect it deserves. And that's something many people still haven't understood. The body doesn't want to punish you. It doesn't want to sabotage you. It wants to carry you. It wants to care for you. But it needs you to care for it too. So the question is, are you going to keep ignoring its signals, or are you finally going to listen? Because life doesn't wait, and neither does the body. Elena used to think her back pain was simply due to poor posture. She never paid much attention to it. It's normal, she would say. It's the price of working so many hours in front of a screen. Until one day the pain became unbearable. It was no longer a passing discomfort. It was a constant reminder, an invisible weight that seemed to drag her down more and more each day. She went to the doctor hoping for a quick solution. Maybe a pill, a therapy, something that would let her get back to her routine without having to face the problem too closely. But the doctor looked at her carefully and asked a question she didn't expect. "How's your life these days?" Elena blinked, confused. "My life? What does that have to do with this?" The doctor smiled calmly. "Your back doesn't just carry your body, it carries your story. And sometimes what weighs most isn't the spine, but what you're carrying on it." Elena didn't know how to respond, but that night, as she lay in bed, the question echoed in her mind. What am I carrying? She thought about the last few years, the responsibility she had taken on, the time she had swallowed her frustration at work, the sleepless nights worrying about things that never even happened. She thought about the resentment she still held from a betrayal she hadn't healed from, the guilt she hadn't learned to let go of. And suddenly, she understood. Pain isn't just physical. The body doesn't speak in words, but it screams through symptoms. And that's the truth few are willing to accept. Many of the ailments that haunt us aren't just about what we eat or how much we exercise. They come from the emotions we've repressed, the thoughts that have tormented us, the wounds we never allowed to heal. We were taught to treat the body like a machine, but we forget it's a reflection of what we live through on the inside. Anxiety isn't just felt in the mind. It shows up in the stomach, in sleepless nights, in skin that breaks out without reason. Stress isn't just an emotional state, it's muscle tension, it's inflammation, it's a weakened immune system. Unspoken anger doesn't vanish. It turns into high blood pressure, constant headaches, a heart that races even in moments of silence. The body records everything, it never forgets, and yet we ignore it. We get used to taking a pill instead of asking what the pain is trying to tell us. We learn to survive with chronic discomfort, assuming it's normal to always feel tired, that it's normal to have digestive issues, that it's normal to wake up feeling like life weighs more than we can carry. But it's not normal. It's just what we've learned to tolerate. In a corner of the world where few dare to look, something worth remembering took place. An old man lived in a small village surrounded by mountains. Throughout his life, he had watched people come and go, always in a hurry, always chasing something, always worried about what might happen next. But he, with his slow steps and calm gaze, seemed to inhabit a different kind of time. The young people in the village often laughed at him. "That old man doesn't worry about anything," they'd say. "He's always there, with his cane and that silly smile." But what they didn't know was that the old man held a secret. One day, a young man from the village, worn out by his own worries, approached him and asked, "How can you be so calm? Don't you worry about the future? Doesn't your body ache after all these years?" The old man smiled kindly and replied, "Of course the body aches, son, but the deepest pain is the one we cause ourselves, by clinging to what has already passed or fearing what has not yet arrived. The key is not to avoid pain, but to learn how to release what we no longer need to carry." The young man frowned. "And how do you do that?" The old man lifted his cane and pointed to the river that flowed near the village. "Look at that river. It never stops. It doesn't cling to the rocks. It doesn't try to hold on to the water that has already passed, nor does it fear the water that hasn't yet arrived. It simply flows. That's how life should be. But humans, instead of flowing, build dams in their minds. We store pain, worries, resentment, and over time, those dams overflow into illness." The young man sat in silence. He had never thought of his body that way. The next morning, he woke up with a headache as usual, but instead of reaching for a pill, he walked to the river. He sat on the bank, watched the water flow, and for the first time in a long time, he took a deep breath. He let out a long sigh as if he could release, just for a moment, some of the weight he'd been carrying on his shoulders. And while his headache didn't vanish immediately, for the first time he felt like he could do something more than ignore it. The body is not an enemy, it is a messenger. The problem is that we've learned to ignore its messages, and if we don't learn to listen, one day it will speak louder than we are ready to hear. Elena understood this when she finally allowed herself to slow down. She didn't need a magic solution or a miracle remedy. She just needed to ask one question that changed everything. What am I still carrying that no longer belongs to me? Because when the body aches, sometimes the cure isn't in what we add, but in what we finally dare to let go of. In a corner of the world where few dare to look, something worth remembering took place. Andres had been living with a knot in his stomach for years, not a stabbing pain or a clear symptom he could easily explain to a doctor. No, it was something deeper, harder to put into words, like carrying a stone in his belly, a weight that no diet or treatment could lift. He had visited specialists, tried herbal remedies, changed his diet. Nothing worked. Everyone told him he was healthy, but he didn't feel that way. Then one day, almost by chance, he overheard an elderly woman speaking to her granddaughter at the market. "The body remembers what the heart hasn't known how to release," the woman said as she arranged a pile of oranges on her stand. "If you never cried over what hurt, if you never let go of what needed to be released, your body will hold it for you." That sentence lodged itself in Andres's mind. He went home, turning it over and over, sensing that those words made more sense than all the medical explanations he'd received over the years. That night, for the first time in a long while, he sat in silence with himself. He forced himself to remember his childhood, the silences in his home, the pent-up rage he never expressed, the betrayal that left a mark, the grief he never fully allowed himself to feel. His stomach clenched with each memory, as if confirming what his mind had yet to accept. Everything he hadn't processed was still there, stored in his body, waiting to be released. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He didn't yet know how to heal, but in that moment, he understood something essential. You cannot heal what you're not willing to feel. We were taught that illness is something external, a problem that appears out of nowhere and that only doctors can solve. But the truth is, the body doesn't just respond to viruses and bacteria. It responds to our emotions, our thoughts, the patterns we unconsciously repeat. Emotions don't disappear just because you ignore them. They stay in the muscles, in the organs, in the skin. They become neck tension, unexplained pain, recurring allergies, exhaustion without a clear cause. Your body isn't against you. It's not punishing you. It's trying to tell you something. But listening to the body isn't the same as obsessing over it. Some fall into the trap of analyzing every symptom with paranoia, searching for hidden meanings behind every discomfort, believing every cold is some divine message. No, it's not about living in fear. It's about living with awareness. It's about learning to recognize the difference between a fleeting discomfort and a pattern that repeats. It's about stopping the habit of seeing health as something separate from us and starting to understand that each day, with every small choice, we either build or break our well-being. Are you truly resting, or are you just lying down while your mind runs in 1,000 directions? Are you feeding yourself what your body genuinely needs, or what marketing has convinced you to crave? Are you moving your body with joy, or punishing it with routines you secretly hate? Are you making room for calm, or only finding peace when you're too exhausted to continue? The key isn't doing everything perfectly. It's not about following the ideal diet, finding the perfect workout, or eliminating all stress. It's about balance, about ending the disconnection. Because in the end, health is not a destination. It's a dialogue. And like any relationship, the most important thing is learning to listen before it's too late. Andres came to understand this little by little. There was no sudden revelation, no overnight miracle. But each day, with every small act of awareness, his body began to respond. A little more energy, a little less heaviness in his stomach, a sense of relief that didn't come from medicine, but from the simple, powerful decision to be present in his own body. Because the body doesn't need to be controlled. It only needs to be cared for, to be listened to be honored. And when you learn to do that, when you truly commit to living in harmony with it, life becomes lighter, not because the problems disappear, but because you no longer carry them with your mind alone, but with your whole being. In a corner of the world where few dare to look, something worth remembering took place. An old watchmaker worked in his tiny workshop, surrounded by gears, hands, and pendulums that marked the rhythm of time with meticulous precision. He had spent more than 50 years repairing watches, watching people rush in, worried about lost time, about the hours that seemed to slip away beyond control. But one day, a young man came in carrying something different. He didn't bring a watch in his hand, but a tired body, a shallow breath, a face etched with exhaustion. "Sir," the young man said, leaning on the counter, "I think I'm running out of time." The watchmaker looked at him calmly, with that kind of gaze only those who've seen many lives pass by seem to possess. "Time is never lost, son. It simply forgets how to flow." The young man frowned. "But that's how it feels, as if something inside me is shutting down. My energy, my joy, my entire body. I've tried everything, diets, workouts, medication, but nothing works." The old man nodded, pulled out a vintage pocket watch and laid it gently on the table. Watches don't stop working all at once. They don't collapse without reason. There are always signs first, an irregular ticking, a piece that sticks, a gear that begins to wear down. And when that happens, most people do exactly what you've done. Try to force the mechanism, apply more pressure, oil it up without truly understanding what it needs. The young man stared at the watch, then lowered his eyes to his own hands. "So what does it need?" The watchmaker smiled gently. "Attention. Not more force, not more effort, just attention." A lump rose in the young man's throat. "Attention to what?" "To what you've been ignoring, to the quiet warnings, to the silences between heartbeats, to the way your body has been trying to speak to you all this time." And just as the old watchmaker would dismantle each gear with precision, with patience, with care, the young man understood that he had to do the same with his own life. to pause, to observe, to listen to everything he had been suppressing. Because the body, like time, isn't something to control, it's something to understand. We've been taught to see health as something external, as a problem to be solved with the right pill, the perfect diet, the miracle routine. But true health isn't a destination to reach, it's a relationship to nurture. It's the result of how we treat ourselves each day, of how we learn to have a conversation with our own being without ignoring it or punishing it. And the question that remains is simple, yet essential. If your body were a watch in that old man's workshop today, what would the mechanism of your life be trying to say? Is it running in harmony, or have you been forcing it to keep going, ignoring the signs of wear? Because time doesn't stop, and neither does your body. But there will come a day when it will make you stop. Don't wait for that moment. Don't wait until wear turns into irreversible damage, until the ticking becomes a final silence. Start today. Breathe more deeply, walk with more presence, listen beyond the noise, and above all, honor the only home you will never be able to leave, your body. Because if there's one thing you've learned in this part of the book, it's that health is not just an act of survival, it is an act of love. And now, with this truth pulsing within you, you are ready to move forward. Third part, the years don't weigh you down. What weighs you down is forgetting. We're born with a virgin body, untouched, supple, ready to move without restriction. But as the years pass, we fill it with tension, wear it down with habits that exhaust it, etch it with the scars of lived experience. We shape it without noticing, until one day we look in the mirror and wonder when we stopped recognizing ourselves. Not just in the reflection of our skin, but in the way we feel inside this shell that's held us since our very first heartbeat. Most people aren't really afraid of getting older. What they fear is aging poorly. They fear wrinkles, yes, but even more, they fear pain, stiffness, and the fragility that turns life into a minefield where every movement feels like a battle. The truth is, it's not time itself that wears us down, it's how we move through it. It's not age that drains our energy, but the accumulated years of poor habits, unresolved stress, and emotions that got trapped in our organs and muscles with no way out. Some people reach 70 with bodies that feel 40. Others hit 40 already worn out, exhausted, and defeated. The difference isn't genetics or luck. It lies in the daily decisions we make, in the relationship we build with our bodies over time. Aging is inevitable. Premature deterioration is not. In a corner of the world where few ever look, something happened that's worth remembering. There was an old man named Tomas, one of those who walk with the serenity of someone who's already figured out what truly matters. At 85, he still climbed stairs with ease, carried grocery bags without complaint, and laughed with the vitality of someone who felt the whole future still lay ahead. One day, someone asked him what his secret was. Tomas paused, looked down at his time-worn hands, and replied with a smile, "I never stopped listening to my body." The young man furrowed his brow. "Listening to your body? What does that even mean?" The old man squinted at the sun warming his face before responding. "It means that when my body asked for rest, I gave it, without guilt. That when I felt tension in my shoulders, I asked myself what emotional weight I was carrying. That when food didn't sit well, I didn't eat it again just out of habit. It means I learned my body wasn't a servant to command, but an ally to respect." The young man stood silently. "Everyone wants to live a long life," Tomas continued, "but few are willing to do what it takes to live well into those years. They think growing old with health is just a matter of luck, but really, it's a matter of choice. I decided long ago that I didn't want to spend my final years regretting how I treated myself, and I've honored that decision ever since." The conversation hung in the air like a hard-to-swallow truth. Because yes, we all want to feel good for as long as possible, but we're not always willing to do what's required to get there. We tell ourselves we'll start tomorrow, change next week, be more mindful someday. But life doesn't wait, and neither does the body. What you do with your body today determines how you'll live inside it tomorrow. What you eat, how you move, how you manage stress, how you let your thoughts affect your biology, it all matters. You can't stop the passage of time, but you can decide how you move through it. And that's one of the few things in life you can actually control. The problem is, we've been taught to treat health like something you fix after it's broken. We see doctors when pain sets in, start a diet when the weight gets out of hand, look for ways to relax only once the stress has already made us sick. But health doesn't work like a switch you can flip on and off. It's a cumulative account built day by day with no pauses and no exceptions. The goal isn't to avoid old age. Old age is a privilege not everyone gets to reach. The goal is to honor your body in every stage of life, to give it what it needs so it can carry you with strength, with dignity, with vitality. There's no greater gift than aging without fear, without pain, without feeling like your own body has become a prison. And for that, you must begin now, because tomorrow is not guaranteed, but today is. If time hasn't caught up with you yet, if illness hasn't knocked on your door, if your body still responds with the strength of someone who can afford to ignore the warning signs, then you're at the perfect moment to start taking care of it. Because health isn't what you get back after losing it, it's what you protect while you still have it. Many people spend the best years of their lives without thinking about the future of their body. They believe vitality is endless, that tiredness can be fixed with more caffeine, that stress is just part of modern life. They tell themselves there's time, that the body will hold up, that they'll start prioritizing themselves later. But the body never forgets. Every sleepless night is stored in your nervous system. Every processed meal leaves its mark on your cellular chemistry. Every unspoken emotion, every unpaid debt of rest, every unrelieved dose of stress is saved like an invisible bill, and one day it will come due. And when that day comes, the bill is non-negotiable. In a corner of the world, where few ever look, something happened that's worth remembering. A man named Samuel woke up one morning and noticed something strange. He couldn't feel his left leg. At first, he thought it had fallen asleep. Maybe he had just slept in a bad position. But when he tried to stand, he collapsed to the floor with no strength. A chill ran down his spine. He couldn't move his leg. The ambulance arrived quickly. At the hospital, the doctors explained that he had suffered a minor stroke. "You're lucky," they told him. "If you had waited any longer, the damage could have been irreversible." Samuel didn't understand. He had never felt anything before. There had been no signs, or so he thought. But when they asked more questions, when they reviewed his medical history, the signs had been there for years. High blood pressure he had always ignored, elevated blood sugar levels he never worried about, recurring headaches he chalked up to stress. His body had been warning him time and time again, but he never listened. And now, all at once, his entire life had come to a halt. The doctors told him that with therapy, he might regain mobility, that he still had a chance to reverse some of the damage. But he was no longer thinking only about his leg. He thought of all the times he had postponed his well-being, of the sleepless nights, of the fast food that became routine, of the stress he had accepted as normal. He thought of how easy it is to neglect yourself when your body doesn't hurt, when the damage isn't yet visible. The body always warns us. The problem is that many people don't listen until there's no other choice. Until exhaustion becomes illness, until inflammation becomes a serious diagnosis, until the body forces them to stop because they never gave themselves permission to do so willingly. And the truth is, no one taught us how to prepare for aging. No one explained how to help the body carry us for as long as possible. We were taught to chase goals, but not to protect the very tool we need to reach them. We were told about success, money, responsibilities, But no one told us that none of it makes sense if the body isn't strong enough to enjoy it. The secret isn't in obsession, not in the fear of illness or the desperate attempt to control the passage of time. The secret lies in awareness, in learning to pause before the body forces you to, in choosing what nourishes instead of what merely fills, in moving the body with gratitude, not punishment, in understanding that every single day you are planting the seeds of either health or deterioration, vitality or wear. Because aging is inevitable, but the quality with which you do it is entirely up to you. The fear of aging is the fear of life itself. Modern culture has turned youth into an idol, a promise of immortality that makes us run from the passing of time as if it were a curse. We are sold creams, surgeries, supplements, miracle diets, and all kinds of strategies to slow down the inevitable. But no one teaches us how to grow old with dignity, to age with health, to age with strength, to age with gratitude. The problem isn't aging itself. The problem is decline. It's the feeling that your body is falling apart too soon, that vitality fades when there's still so much left to live. Old age is not the enemy. The enemy is fragility. And the good news is that fragility is not a mandatory fate. It is, in large part, something we build. Yes, genetics matter. Yes, your environment plays a role. But the decisions you make every single day carry even more weight. What you eat, how you rest, how you move, how you think. These are the architects of your physical future. In a quiet corner of the world, where few ever look, something happened that's worth remembering. Maria was 75 years old, yet she walked with the energy of someone 20 years younger. Her hair was graying, her skin bore the passage of time, but her body remained strong. She climbed stairs with ease, her mind was sharp, and while many of her friends complained about chronic aches, she kept enjoying life with enthusiasm. One day at a family gathering, her granddaughter asked her, "Grandma, what's your secret? How do you stay so well?" Maria smiled and answered simply, "I don't have secrets, I have habits." Habits? Yes, dear. I rise with the sun, I walk every day, I eat what gives me energy instead of what steals my health. I surround myself with people who lift me up, and most importantly, I never stopped moving or learning. Her granddaughter frowned. "But Grandma, aging is inevitable." "Of course it is," Maria said, "but the way you age depends on you. Some people start dying at 40, not because their body fails them, but because they abandoned their body long before." Her granddaughter was stunned. She had never thought of it that way. Because aging isn't synonymous with weakness. The body can continue to function optimally if you give it what it needs, if you respect its rhythm, if you build strength instead of fear. And here lies the crucial point. Accelerated aging isn't just about the passing of years. It's about accumulated habits. Every cigarette you smoke, every night of lost sleep, every day of inactivity, every ultra-processed food you eat, every stressful, anxious thought, every time you ignore what your body truly needs. Nothing happens overnight. Decline doesn't arrive with one mistake, or a rough week, or even a hard year. It arrives after decades of small choices that add up until they become your body's reality. And the same goes for longevity and vitality. It's not luck, it's not magic. It's a series of daily decisions that, little by little, lead you toward healthy aging or premature deterioration. Want to know your future? Look at your habits today. Are you nourishing your body or punishing it? Are you moving it with love or letting it rust? Are you filling it with healing thoughts and emotions or with toxins? The body is a mirror of the love or the neglect it receives. And this is where many people fail, because they see caring for the body as a burden, a struggle, a forced discipline. But self-care is not suffering. It's the greatest act of self-love you can offer. Youth is not about age. It's about vitality. We've been led to believe that aging is a punishment, a destiny we're all doomed to face. We're sold the idea that time is an enemy to be fought with surgeries, drugs, and empty promises. But reality is different. Aging itself doesn't destroy the body. It's how we treat it along the way that does. The skin loses elasticity, the muscles weaken, energy declines, but not simply because of age. It happens because the body responds to what we give it. If you feed it with living foods, it stays strong. If you move it, it stays agile. If you care for it, it ages gracefully. If you neglect it, it collapses prematurely. Science has proven this time and time again. Premature aging is not inevitable. It's the result of chronic inflammation, cellular oxidation, and a lifestyle that accelerates wear and tear. And at the same time, there are people who defy age with astonishing vitality, not because they've found the elixir of youth, but because they've learned to work with their biology instead of against it. In a quiet corner of the world where few ever look, something happened that's worth remembering. Matteo was 60 years old, but his body felt like 40. He ran every morning, ate consciously, slept deeply, and kept his mind sharp. He wasn't a superhuman. He didn't have privileged genes. He had simply learned something few truly grasp. Age is not measured in years. It's measured in the condition of your inner system. But Matteo hadn't always been that way. In his younger years, he lived like many do: fast food, sleepless nights, constant stress, and a body silently bearing the load. Until, at 40, his health began to collapse. High blood pressure, chronic fatigue, joint pain. He went to the doctor expecting a quick fix, but instead received a warning. If you keep going like this, in 10 years you'll be taking 5 pills a day. That day, Matteo made the decision that would change his life, not with extreme diets or impossible sacrifices, but with small, consistent, and sustainable changes. He started by improving his diet, cutting the excesses and nourishing himself with what his body truly needed. He learned that muscle wasn't just about aesthetics, but a reservoir of youth and energy. He committed to moving every single day. He reduced his stress, prioritized rest, breath, and mental well-being, and little by little his body responded. What once seemed irreversible began to heal. His energy returned, his skin regained its glow, his immune system grew stronger. In 10 years, instead of relying on medication, he was in the best shape of his life. The lesson was clear. Age doesn't destroy the body. Accumulated habits do. But there's something deeper in all this. The body doesn't age only from food, movement, or rest. It also ages from what you carry inside it. Resentment ages you. Fear ages you. Stress ages you. Life is a constant exchange between what you hold on to and what you let go of. If you store anguish, your nervous system overloads. If you live in constant anger, your body oxidizes from the inside. If you go years without forgiveness, tension becomes chronic pain. Aging with health isn't just about physical care. It's about learning to release what no longer serves you, because whatever you carry inside will eventually show up in the mirror. The body is an ecosystem, a universe of its own, where every organ, every cell, every process has a perfect function. But we were led to believe the body is an object, a shell without intelligence, something we can push, demand, and punish without consequence. We were told that when something breaks, a pill will fix it, a nap will cure it, that we can ignore it and move on. But the body is not a machine to be repaired at will. It is a living, dynamic organism that responds to every single decision we make. We were taught to care about the surface, to obsess over appearance, to believe that youth is merely firm skin and shiny hair. But true youth lives in the energy you carry, in the clarity of your mind, in the lightness of your heart. Some people are 20 and walk as if burdened by a life without purpose, and others are past 70 and shine with a vitality that defies time. In a quiet corner of the world where few ever look, something happened worth remembering. Isabella was 35 and felt twice her age. Her body felt heavy. Her energy was drained. Her skin showed the exhaustion of years without real rest. She had tried everything: diets, supplements, treatments promising to restore her vitality, but nothing worked. Until one day, after a medical checkup, she received an unexpected diagnosis. Her body was in a state of chronic inflammation. "It's not a disease on its own," her doctor explained, "but if you don't stop it now, it will become something worse. Your body is at war with you, and you haven't even noticed." Isabella shivered. She had never thought of her body as a battlefield, but it made sense. For years she had ignored the stress, the insomnia, the fast food between meetings, the resentment she never released. And her body had responded the only way it knew how, by slowly shutting down. That day, she chose to do something different, not search for instant solutions, not obsess over weight or some ideal image, but instead to understand what was causing the problem at its root. And then she discovered what no one had ever told her. Chronic inflammation isn't just about food. It's the result of a system that has been in emergency mode for too long. Sustained stress releases hormones that inflame the body. Anxiety blocks cellular regeneration. Lack of sleep disrupts your inner chemistry. Ultra-processed food overwhelms your liver and gut. And inactivity slows down even the fastest metabolism. Isabella realized it wasn't about making drastic changes overnight, but about restoring her connection with her body. She learned to eat real food, not what marketing sold as healthy. She discovered that exercise wasn't punishment, but a gift that kept her body vibrant. She allowed herself to rest without guilt, to breathe deeply, to let go of what no longer served her. And within months, her body woke up. Her energy returned, her skin regained its glow, her mind cleared. Not because she found the perfect diet, but because she stopped fighting her own biology. Aging is not the enemy. It is a natural process, but how you age depends greatly on how you live. Wrinkled skin isn't the problem. A prematurely worn-out body is. Gray hair doesn't harm your quality of life, but chronic exhaustion does. The goal isn't to avoid old age, but to arrive there with dignity, with fullness, with a body still eager to move, to enjoy, to exist with strength. The problem is that many only think about health once it's already lost. They worry about their heart after the first scare in their chest. They look for solutions when their body has already collapsed. But health isn't something you recover overnight. It's a capital built with every choice. Every bite you take is a message to your cells. Every thought you repeat is a command to your nervous system. Every habit, good or bad, is an investment in the body that will walk with you until the very end. What you do today determines how you'll feel tomorrow, and how you treat your body now will define how you live the years to come. Because health is not just the absence of disease, it is the ability to live with freedom, with lightness, without unnecessary pain, without a weight that keeps you from enjoying what you love most. Time doesn't wait, but you still have the chance to change, to transform your body into a home you truly want to live in. The body is the only home you'll have for life. No matter how many houses you buy, how many places you explore, how many times you move, this vessel will be with you through every sunrise, every dream fulfilled, every goodbye, and every return. And yet, so many spend their lives treating it as disposable, as if wear and tear were inevitable, as if there were no way to extend vitality, to grow older with strength and wholeness. We were taught to see aging as decline, when in truth it should be a wise transition, a path where the body changes but does not have to break before its time. It is not age that brings illness. It is the accumulation of neglect, of habits that quietly extinguish the inner flame. In a quiet corner of the world where few ever look, something happened worth remembering. Don Mateo was 85 and still walked every morning along the riverbank. His back was straight, his gaze steady. His skin bore the story of many years without losing the light of vitality. The young people of the town watched him in awe. Many of them, in their 30s or 40s, felt more worn out than he did. "Grandpa, what's your secret?" a young man asked one afternoon, watching him tie up his small fishing canoe. Don Mateo smiled with the calm of someone who has understood something others have yet to discover. "There's no secret, son. I just learned to listen to my body before it was too late." The young man frowned. "Listen? Yes. Most people don't listen until the body starts to scream, but when you learn to understand it, you can care for it before the damage becomes irreversible." The young man fell silent. He had never seen health that way. He always thought it was a matter of luck, of genetics, of the inevitable. But Don Mateo had made conscious choices to arrive where he was. And then, without realizing it, the old man gave him a lesson that would change his life. If you treat your body like an enemy, it will wear out before its time. But if you treat it like an ally, it will carry you to the end. The young man asked for more advice, and the elder offered it freely. Eat what the earth gives you, not what comes in boxes filled with false promises. Move every day, not out of obligation, but because your body was made to move. Sleep well, because rest is the silent doctor that heals everything. Don't hold on to anger. What you don't release rots inside you. And never stop using your mind, because a brain that stops learning is a body that begins to shut down. Simple principles, yet forgotten by most. Many believe youth is measured by smooth skin or the absence of wrinkles. But true youth lies in waking up with energy, having strong legs to keep walking, not needing pills to sleep or caffeine to stay awake. Longevity is not an accident. It's a consequence of how you live. Studies of regions where people routinely live past 100 in good health have revealed the same truth over and over again. Nutrition is essential, but it's not everything. Movement is vital, but it's not enough. What truly makes the difference is a lifestyle in harmony, where stress is not a daily poison, where food is a ritual of gratitude, where human connection nourishes as much as nourishment itself, where the body is treated like a temple, not a production machine. But we live in a world where the culture of burnout is the norm, where rushing is glorified, overwork is expected, and success is placed above well-being. We are taught to push the body to its limit, to ignore signs of exhaustion, to postpone wellness until we have time. And when the body finally collapses, we seek quick fixes, without realizing the only true solution is prevention. Today, in this very moment, you still have the opportunity to change. It doesn't matter how old you are, how many mistakes you've made, how many times you've neglected your body. Each day is a new chance to start listening, to treat it with respect, to give it what it truly needs. Because it's not just about living longer, it's about living well. It's about reaching old age with strength in your stride, laughter in your chest, breath without struggle. It's about looking back and not feeling like you wasted your life inside a body you never knew how to care for. The future is unwritten, but what you do today will shape how you live it. And now that you've come this far, now that you understand what it truly means to care for your shell, the question is simple. What will you do with this knowledge? Because true transformation doesn't happen when you understand something. It happens when you decide to apply it. And you, here and now, hold in your hands the most important decision: to keep ignoring what your body is trying to tell you, or to begin honoring it as the gift it truly is. Time keeps moving, but you can still choose. Start today. Do it for yourself. Do it for the life that still lies ahead. Do it because you deserve to live in a body that not only carries you, but allows you to experience all the fullness this world has to offer. This is your moment. This is your awakening. Fourth part, welcome to your shell. In a quiet corner of the world where few ever look, something happened that's worth remembering. An old watchmaker spent his days repairing mechanisms in a small wooden workshop. His hands, etched by time, held tiny gears with the precision of someone who understood the rhythm of the years. One day, a young man walked in, frustrated with his old pocket watch. He placed it on the table and sighed with resignation. "I don't know what's wrong with it," he said. "It just stopped working out of nowhere." The old man picked it up between his fingers and examined it carefully. Then, with a calm smile, he replied, "It didn't stop working out of nowhere. It's full of dust, tiny particles that made their way in over time. What seems like a sudden failure is actually the result of many days, many nights of invisible wear." The young man frowned. "So how do you fix it?" The old man patiently removed the cover and pointed to the inner workings. "Cleaning, attention, precision. But above all, you must understand that this didn't happen overnight. Wear is something that accumulates, just like life." The young man fell silent, and in that moment he realized that his body was just like that watch. From the moment you opened your eyes for the first time, your life didn't fully belong to you. You arrived in a world already built, in a body you didn't choose, into a family with a past you didn't know. From that instant, you inherited not just their genes, but their history, their habits, their beliefs. You were born into a shell carrying centuries of memory etched into it. Your body is not just a collection of bones and organs. It is the result of thousands of years of evolution, the accumulation of lives lived long before you. You are the reflection of all that humanity has been before you arrived. The streets you walk, the buildings around you, the customs you follow without question, they're all echoes of the past. We were made to believe our story begins with us. But the truth is, we are the product of everything that came before. Every bite of food you take is the result of centuries of agriculture, of wars fought over fertile land, of family traditions passed down through generations. Your language, the way you think, even the way you relate to your body has been shaped by collective karma. Because karma isn't just a spiritual concept. Karma means action, and every action leaves a consequence. Look at the city you live in. It was built on the lives of millions before you, buildings erected by hands that no longer exist, streets that witnessed footsteps you'll never know, laws written long before you were born. And still, you move through that world as if it had always been this way, as if it were destined to be so. But the same thing happens within you. Your body is a city of its own, a city built by biology, by ancestral history, by the habits you inherited unknowingly. Your skin is the map of a lineage stretching back through centuries. Your blood carries the memory of all who came before. Your organs, your nervous system, your metabolism, they have all been shaped by life that unfolded long before your first breath. And here comes the essential question. How much of who you are today is the result of your choices, and how much was imposed on you without your awareness? Imagine a child born into a house built centuries ago. He doesn't choose the color of the walls, the layout of the rooms, the cracks in the ceiling. He simply grows up there. He becomes accustomed to the creaking floorboards, to the shadows in the corners, to the smell of dampness held in the walls. He never wonders if that house could be different because it's the only reality he knows. That's exactly what happens with your body. You live inside it without ever questioning how much of its current condition reflects an inherited history. If your energy feels low, if your digestion is fragile, if your skin shows signs of stress, if your muscles are tense, if you suffer from family illnesses, maybe you've never stopped to question it. Maybe you believe it's just how you are. But the truth is, much of it is the result of accumulated karma. Not karma as punishment, but karma as inherited action. Actions taken by others before you had the chance to choose for yourself. We were taught that life is just the time between birth and death, that the past stays behind, and the only thing that matters is what we do today. But that's not how reality works. The past doesn't disappear. It accumulates. It embeds itself in every cell, every thought, every habit. The anxiety you feel when the phone rings, the emotional hunger that drives you to eat without need, the unexplained exhaustion, the sudden illnesses, each one has a history. This isn't only about what you do today. It's about what's been done before you ever had a choice. But there's something more. If everything you are has been built upon the history that came before you, then you have two choices. One, to keep living under the weight of that accumulation, repeating patterns without even realizing it. Two, to break the cycle and rewrite your relationship with your body. Because while you've inherited the story, you've also inherited the power to change it. And that's the great revelation so few truly understand. You can change your karma. You can rewrite the story of your body. You can free it from what was imposed, from what was inherited, from what was programmed into you without your knowledge. You are not doomed to repeat the story of those who came before. You don't have to live with the same mistakes, the same symptoms, the same pain. Your body is not a prison. It is a vehicle, but only if you choose to take the wheel. The young man looked at the watchmaker with new understanding. The dust inside the watch hadn't appeared out of nowhere. It had accumulated over time, through neglect, through lack of attention. But by opening the mechanism, cleaning it with patience, and removing every trapped particle, the watch regained its rhythm, its precision, its purpose. The same happens with the body. If you're willing to look at what's built up within it, if you learn to cleanse it from the toxins of the past, if you pause to hear what it's been trying to tell you all along, then you can restore its balance. And maybe, for the first time in your life, you can truly inhabit your shell with full awareness. We were led to believe the body is a machine, that its failures are fixed with medicine, that its ailments are accidents of fate, that its wear is inevitable. But the truth is, the body is not just biology, it is history. A history that doesn't begin with you, but one you can rewrite. Imagine inheriting a house that's been in the family for centuries. At first, everything seems fine, the layout, the color of the walls, the creak of the wooden floors. But over time, you notice things. Cracks in the foundation, rusted pipes, windows that no longer close properly. You didn't cause the damage, but now it's your responsibility. That's your body. You inherited not just its shape, but its functioning. You didn't choose the genetics you were born with, but you live with their consequences. Your organs, your immune system, your metabolism, all were shaped by the accumulation of generations before you. But that doesn't mean you can't change it. Karma is not a sentence. It is not a fate carved in stone. Karma is action, and every action you take can transform the story you inherited. In a quiet corner of the world where few ever look, something happened that's worth remembering. A boy grew up in a village where everyone believed poverty was an unbreakable destiny. His parents, his grandparents, his neighbors, they all lived under the same belief. It's always been this way, it always will be. No matter how hard they worked or how much they tried, everything seemed to bring them back to the same place. But one day, the boy saw something the others didn't. A traveler arrived in the village wearing clothes that seemed from another world, carrying stories of cities where people lived differently. That day, the boy realized that reality wasn't immovable. Life could be something else. What his people called fate was just a story they kept telling themselves. The boy grew up with a certainty. If he wanted to change his destiny, he had to change his story. And the same is true for you. If you keep seeing your body as something fixed, as something that only responds to luck or genetics, you'll stay trapped in the same old narrative. But if you realize that you can rewrite it every day, everything changes. Have you noticed how some families seem destined for certain illnesses? Grandparents with high blood pressure, parents with diabetes, children with the same conditions. They tell us it's genetic, But what's really passed down isn't just genes, it's habits. It's the way of eating, of moving, of managing stress. It's the thoughts and beliefs about health. And here lies the key. If what you inherited was learned, then it can be unlearned. It doesn't matter if your family has struggled with obesity for generations, if anxiety has been a constant companion, if cancer or depression has left its mark on your lineage. Your destiny is not written in stone. You can break the cycle. You can decide that the story of your body from this day forward will be different. But to do that, you must first understand what you're carrying. We've been programmed not to question. If you're born in a country where ultra-processed food is considered normal, you eat it without asking if it's truly nourishing. If everyone around you sleeps just a few hours, you assume fatigue is just part of life. If you see your parents live in a constant state of stress, you grow up believing that life is meant to be a struggle. And so, each of us inherits a life we didn't choose, but we accept it without even realizing it. Until one day, the body begins to speak. The persistent migraines, the sluggish digestion, the unexplained fatigue, they're not coincidences. They are the cracks in the house you've inherited. They are karma manifesting through symptoms. But now comes the most important question. What will you do with what you've inherited? You can keep repeating the same patterns, or you can break the cycle. You can accept your body's story as an unchangeable fate, or you can begin to write a new chapter. In a quiet corner of the world, where few ever look, something happened that's worth remembering. A woman named Clara had spent years battling her weight. No matter what diet she tried, she always ended up back in the same place. She tried it all: extreme fasting, pills, grueling workout routines. Nothing worked. One day, a doctor asked her a question no one had asked before. "Clara, what was your mother's relationship with food like?" Clara frowned. She was always on a diet. She always talked about eating less, like food was her enemy. The doctor nodded. "And you, when was the first time you felt something was wrong with your body?" Clara felt a knot in her throat. She remembered her childhood, her mother looking in the mirror with disappointment, saying things like, "If I eat this, I'll get fat," or "I need to punish myself at the gym." Clara realized her relationship with food wasn't just hers. It was a story she had inherited without even knowing it. That day, she understood that her problem wasn't just her metabolism. It was in her mind. It was in the story she had been told about her body since she was a little girl. And in that moment, she knew that a diet alone would never be enough. She had to change her story. The same is true for each one of us. We are not just what we eat, what we do, what we think. We are what we inherit. And the question is, how much of who you are is truly your own choice? If you grew up in a home where meals were rushed, do you really enjoy your food, or are you just repeating a habit? If you saw your parents live in constant stress, do you really need to stay busy, or did you simply learn that stillness was dangerous? If no one in your family exercised, do you truly hate movement, or were you just taught it didn't matter? Everything we do carries a story, and if that story is limiting you, it's time to change it. Because if karma is the accumulation of action, then the only way to break it is by taking a new action. Today, you can choose. You can continue living under the same patterns, or you can be the first link in the chain to break the story you inherited. You can keep feeding the same beliefs, or you can rewrite them. You can accept that this is just how your body is, or you can transform it. What you do with this knowledge is your decision. But remember this, your story does not define you. You are free to write a different ending. In a quiet corner of the world, where few ever look, something happened that's worth remembering. An old teacher had spent years guiding young students who were hungry for answers. One day, a restless student asked him, "Master, why do some people suffer for no reason? Why are some born with illnesses, with fragile bodies, while others seem to have inherited strength and vitality?" The teacher smiled with the calm of someone who has understood life for a long time. Because no one comes into this world empty. We arrive carrying a story, a past that isn't only ours but of those who came before us. What we call destiny is often just the accumulation of past actions. The student frowned. Then are we trapped in what we inherit? The teacher shook his head. No, but first, we have to see it clearly. Karma is not punishment. It's inertia. If you walk down a path where millions have walked before, it's easier to keep going in the same direction than to step off of it. But if you choose to veer away, to create a new route, then you stop repeating the cycle. That is where true freedom begins. The student nodded slowly, like someone grasping something fundamental for the first time. The same is true of our bodies. We don't arrive here with a blank canvas. Each of us inherits a story, written into our DNA, our habits, our way of seeing the world. And though many of those stories help us survive, others bind us to illness, to limiting beliefs, to ways of living that drain us without us even noticing. If you've ever wondered why certain illnesses seem to repeat in families, why behavioral patterns pass from generation to generation, it's because the body doesn't just inherit genes, it inherits teachings. The stress you carry today may be the same your mother bore while trying to balance her life. The way you eat might be a mirror of what you saw your father do, never questioning it. Your strength or fragility in the face of illness might stem from generations of habits that were never broken. But here's the good news. Inheriting something doesn't mean you have to keep it. We were taught that health is something individual, something that depends solely on our personal choices. But the truth is, your body is not just yours. It's the sum of everything that happened before you were born. Think of it this way. When you arrived in this world, there was already a system in place for eating, for resting, for living, a system shaped long before you got here. Cities weren't designed for people to walk and stay active, but to rely on vehicles. The food industry didn't consider your well-being, but how much profit could be made from cheap, addictive, ultra-processed products. Modern routines were built so that work and productivity took precedence over rest and mental health. Do you really believe your health problems are solely your fault? Or are you part of a much larger system you've never questioned? The life you live today wasn't designed by you. The options you believe you have are the ones you were given. The health issues you face didn't begin with you, but that doesn't mean you can't do something about them. If society has built a system that makes people sick, you still have the choice to step out of it. If humanity's karma has been the accumulation of destructive habits, you can break the cycle. If the world around you lives in haste, stress, and exhaustion, you can choose to be the exception. But first, you must realize that you've inherited far more than you think. In a quiet corner of the world where few ever look, something happened that's worth remembering. A man was born into a family where everyone struggled with heart problems. His grandfather died of a heart attack. His father battled high blood pressure. From a young age, he was told his fate was sealed. Sooner or later, it'll happen to you too, they said. And at 30, a doctor confirmed what he had feared. His cholesterol was dangerously high, his blood pressure rising, his body following the same path as the men before him. But instead of resigning himself to it, he did something no one else in his family had done. He questioned his destiny. He began to study, to investigate. He came to understand that while his family did have a genetic predisposition, what truly shaped their lives were the habits they all shared. The same foods, the same sedentary lifestyle, the same way of handling stress. It wasn't a divine punishment. It was a pattern that had never been broken. That day, he chose a different path. Not through extreme diets or punishing exercise, but with small, consistent daily decisions. He reduced his sugar intake. He stopped eating out of anxiety. He started walking every day. He learned to breathe more consciously. 10 years later, he returned to the doctor. His test results told a new story. He had no signs of heart disease. He took no pills. He had rewritten the future that everyone assumed was inevitable. What we inherit does not define us. What we do with that inheritance, that's what defines us. Humanity has spent centuries gathering knowledge about health, longevity, and well-being, and yet we find ourselves increasingly unwell. Not from ignorance, but from misinformation. Because health is not what you were taught in school. It's not just about eating less or moving more. It's not about supplements or counting calories. It's not just about visiting a doctor when something breaks. Health is a relationship. It's the ongoing dialogue between what you do, what you think, and what you feel. And if you want to change your story, you must change the way you relate to your body. Ask yourself, how much of what you believe about health have you really questioned? How much have you simply accepted because that's how it's always been? How many of your habits are truly yours? And how many have been passed down by your family, your culture, or the people around you? How often have you accepted pain, fatigue, or anxiety as normal without ever asking if another way of living is possible? Because if you follow the same path as those who came before you, you will arrive at the same destination. But if you dare to question it, if you choose something different, then you can build a story no one has ever written before. In the next section, we will explore how to break free from the karma of illness, how to escape the cycle of inherited habits, and how to begin living in a body that truly feels like your own. No matter what you've inherited, no matter what your family story has been, no matter what society has imprinted on you, you always have a choice. And if you choose wisely, your body won't be a burden from the past, but the best ally for the future you wish to build. In a quiet corner of the world where few ever look, something happened that's worth remembering. A woman named Elena had spent her entire life at war with her body. Since childhood, she had been told to eat less, to exercise more, that her metabolism was slow, that she had bad genes. She grew up believing her destiny was to struggle, with her weight, with her low energy, with skin that never glowed. She tried every diet, followed every rule, but nothing ever seemed to work. Until one day, someone asked her a question that changed everything. What if the problem isn't your body, but the story you've been told about it? Elena frowned. She had never looked at it that way. She had always believed her body was broken. But what if, in truth, it had simply been repeating a story she had inherited? What if her metabolism wasn't naturally slow, but had been conditioned to function that way? What if her low energy wasn't inherent, but the result of years of stress and unchallenged beliefs? That day, she understood something essential. It's not enough to change what you eat or how you move. You have to change the story you tell yourself about your body. If you feel today that your body is betraying you, if it seems to resist every effort, start by asking yourself what story you've inherited about it. Because what you believe about your body directly affects how it functions. If you grew up hearing that your metabolism slows down with age, your body will respond to that belief. If you were told that stress is just part of life, your nervous system will learn to live in a constant state of alert. If you saw your family fall ill at a certain age, your mind might silently prepare to follow that same path, even without your awareness. And most importantly, if you believe that health is a privilege for the lucky few, you'll never take ownership of your own. But here's the truth no one ever told you. Biology is not just destiny. It is response. Your body responds to what you give it, not just in food or exercise, but in thoughts, emotions, and energy. If you continue feeding it limiting beliefs, inherited fears, unconscious patterns, it will continue to function in the same way. But if you begin to shift the narrative, if you send it new signals, then it can change. Because what you believe shapes what you experience. They taught us that youth and health inevitably fade with time. But if you look at those who have lived over 100 years with vitality, you'll see it's not just about genetics. It's about how they live. These people don't age the way most do because they never accepted the story that the body breaks with age. They don't obsess over extreme diets, but they also don't poison their bodies with food that drains them. They don't exercise to punish their bodies, but because they know movement is life. They don't see rest as a luxury, but as a biological necessity. They don't face life with fear, but with curiosity. And here's something few truly understand. Longevity and vitality are not just matters of physical health. They are matters of mental health. Because you can eat the best food and do the best workouts, but if you live with fear, anger, or resentment, your body will inflame the same way it would with a bad diet. Inflammation doesn't come only from food, it comes from the emotions you carry. Stress doesn't only harm the mind, it damages your DNA, your immune system, your digestion. Fear doesn't just paralyze, it alters your body's chemistry and accelerates aging. So if you truly want to transform your health, it's not enough to change what you eat. You must change how you think, how you feel, and how you inhabit your body. In a quiet corner of the world, where few ever look, something happened that's worth remembering. A Japanese doctor spent his days studying the world's longest living elders. He visited villages in Okinawa, where hundreds of people had surpassed 100 years of age with vitality. And when he asked them what their secret was, their answers were simple. We never stopped moving. We never stopped learning. We never stopped laughing. But what struck him even more was that they weren't obsessed with living longer. They were obsessed with living well. Because what makes life worth living is not how long it lasts, but how deeply you experience it. If you live in pain, without energy or passion, every extra year becomes a burden, not a blessing. But if you live with a light body, a clear mind, and enthusiasm, then every year is a gift. And here lies the key. The body you'll have 20 years from now is being built today. Every decision you make now is a brick in the architecture of your future. What you eat today will become the skin you wear tomorrow. The way you move today will define your mobility a decade from now. The stress you manage today will shape the health or disease you carry into the future. But most people don't think about any of this until it's too late. We were made to believe that health is a lottery, that some are born strong and others weak. But science has proven the opposite. The body is adaptable. If you give it what it truly needs, it regenerates, strengthens, transforms. If you feed it the wrong things, it weakens, inflames, and begins to shut down. The real question isn't whether you can improve your health. The question is, are you willing? And this is where most people fall. Because change means challenging everything you've ever believed about life and your body. It means questioning what your parents taught you, what society modeled, what you assumed without noticing. It means breaking patterns that have lived inside your family for generations. But if you're willing, then you can write a different story. In a quiet corner of the world where few ever look, something happened that's worth remembering. An old master sat in front of his students and, without saying a word, placed a glass of water on the table. Then calmly, he dropped a single drop of black ink into the glass. The ink slowly expanded, tinting the water into a dark hue. The students looked at one another, confused. Then the master smiled and asked, "How can we make it clear again?" The students rushed to answer. Some suggested pouring it out and refilling it with clean water. Others proposed filtering the ink, but the master shook his head. Without another word, he took a jug of clean water and slowly began to pour it into the glass. The ink, once so dominant, began to fade. With every drop of pure water, the dark color grew lighter until the glass was once again transparent. The master looked at them and said, "This is how the body works. You don't need to empty it completely or start from scratch. You just need to fill it, day by day, with what is right. And little by little, everything that doesn't belong will leave on its own." We've reached the crucial point of this journey. Until now, we've understood that our body is the accumulation of a story we didn't start, that we've inherited not just DNA, but beliefs, habits, and ways of living imposed on us before we had the chance to choose. But now we know that what we inherited isn't set in stone. We can break the cycle. We can write a different story. The question is, how? Because change isn't just a decision, it's action. And action doesn't mean making massive sacrifices overnight. It's what you do every single day, in every small decision, in every habit. If you fill your body with real food, what poisons you will eventually fade. If you begin to move each day, stiffness and fatigue will melt away. If you learn to breathe, stress will lose its grip on you. If you sleep well, your body will naturally regenerate. If you release emotions you've carried, your energy will shift completely. Because transformation doesn't come from a radical change. It comes from consistency. It's not what you do once, it's what you do every day. They made us believe that being healthy requires suffering, that taking care of your body means sacrificing pleasure, comfort, and social life. But the truth is something else entirely. Health is not a prison, it is a liberation. When you truly begin to care for your body, everything in your life improves. You have more energy, more clarity, more connection to life. The illnesses that once seemed inevitable begin to fade away. The weight you carried on your shoulders, both physical and emotional, becomes lighter. Your mind clears, your skin glows, and exhaustion stops being your natural state. And most importantly, you realize that your body was never against you. It was simply asking for help. The problem is, we live in a world designed to make you ignore those signals. Society sells you instant relief instead of real solutions. It gives you pills instead of teaching you how to heal. It offers distractions instead of helping you face the origin of your symptoms. But if you're reading this, it means you're ready to see the truth. And the truth is simple. Your body wants to heal. It just needs you to let it. In a quiet corner of the world, where few ever look, something happened that's worth remembering. A man named Diego had spent most of his life without worrying about his body. He ate without thinking, slept whenever he could, lived in a rush. He always told himself that once he had more time, he'd start taking care of himself. But that time never came. Until one day, his body stopped him. A pain in his chest, a pressure that wouldn't go away. The doctors told him his heart was on the edge, that if he didn't change now, there would be no later. That night, Diego stared at the ceiling of his room and understood something. He had spent his whole life seeing his body as a machine, but he had never treated it like a home. He had always expected his body to hold him up, to endure the stress, the fatigue, the poor nutrition. But he had never taken the time to hold his body in return. That day, he decided to change, not out of fear, but out of love. He learned to eat with awareness, to truly breathe, to move not out of obligation, but because his body needed it. And over time, his body responded. It wasn't magic, it was consistency. Because the body doesn't need miracles, it just needs to be heard. If you've made it this far, something inside you knows it's time to change. Don't wait for your body to force you. Don't wait until it's too late. Start today. And don't do it with fear. Don't do it with guilt. Don't do it under the pressure of perfection. Do it because you deserve to live in a body that works well. Do it because your future depends on what you do now. Do it because, at the end of the day, your body is your only real home. They made us believe that aging is inevitable, that illness is normal, that exhaustion is just part of life, but it's not. What's normal is feeling well. What's normal is waking up with energy, moving with ease, aging with strength. What's not normal is the disconnection we've been taught to accept, but now you know. And once you know, you can't ignore it. Change begins now. The choice is in your hands. The glass of water doesn't need to be emptied. It just needs, drop by drop, to be filled with what is right. And if you do that, little by little, everything that doesn't belong will leave on its own. Because true health is not just the absence of disease. It is the art of living in harmony with the body that carries you. And now, you are ready to begin.